Welcome to HealthPod, your self-development hub
on mental health, psychology, and spirituality.
In order to influence yourself and others, sometimes you need to be a little bit crazy. When we talk about body language, we think about two interactions: what we convey to others and what others convey to us. But there is a third interaction: what we convey to us. Everybody communicates, but only a few people connect. And when you learn to connect, you can influence people. We can influence people when we show them that we care. Trust is the most expensive asset in leadership. It takes years to build and just seconds to lose. If you don't trust the messenger, you won't trust the message. Only when things change inside you, things will change around you.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Stefanos Ioannou. I'm a psychophysiologist and I specialize on emotional disorders as well as relationship coaching. For those of you who would like to learn more about me and what I do as a living, do not forget to check my website as well as my social media presence for free self-help content. Today, I have with me Savvas Trichas, who has a Ph.D. in leadership and works at the Ministry of Education. He will be sharing with us today his wisdom in regards to how we can influence people as well as ourselves to convey our message clearly and tell stories that will help you inspire other people's lives. Stay tuned. So I have been following you a while on social media now, and I have been magnetized by your content. You use a lot of examples from daily life that make things relatable to each and every one of us. And something that I truly enjoy whenever you do is that when you use examples from the animal kingdom that translate into human life, because I'm a big animal lover, nature lover myself, so I find the curiosity of the child within me to dig deeper into what you're saying. And something that stood out for me that you've put a couple of months ago was the example that you've communicated in regards to the geese whenever they fly. Can you tell us a little bit more about that example?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a huge honor saying such a kind words from you, because I'm a huge fan of you. And of course, you and Helen have been doing so many good stuff. So keep up the amazing work.
Thank you, brother.
For the geese, it's impressive how intelligent animals can be in their own evolutionary perspective. So when geese fly, they use this V-type formation, which has been pointing just a little bit up, which is in accordance with the law of aerodynamics. So when you go pointy and up, you create such aerodynamic, which means that the point, the corner, the top corner, will get most of the air, while the back ends get less of the air. So the leader of the pack would go up to the corner, and they would struggle and put their best until they fail. When they're about to fail, they fly all the way back to get some rest, and another strong goose will get into the front and get the leader position. So many good lessons from that. One lesson: leadership is all about teamwork. There is no one in leadership. Leadership is a team. So they will exchange the leadership, they will take the struggle, and when they feel that my work is done here, I cannot provide anymore, they give the leadership up.
Wow, this is so impressive, and the lessons that we can learn just by being present and actually having the eyes to watch, appreciate, and study what's around us. It could teach us so many things about ourselves, about leadership, and about influence, which brings us to the topic that we will be discussing today. Now, we've kind of dived into certain different examples right now, but I would like to know a little bit more about you and the people that might be watching us that might not have stumbled on your social media presence. That is fantastic. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself? You have a PhD in leadership. And what drove you into going into this? What were those things within you that made you want to learn more about what makes a good leader, influence?
Man, when you ask that kind of question, I feel that I'm on the chair and you're analyzing me. So I feel like I could get a free course here. Anyway, answering to your question. Yeah, my PhD was on leadership and facial expressions.
Okay.
So that was the two areas that fascinated me. Why? Because I was a very shy kid.
Okay.
Doctor. I was a very shy kid. So, but at the same time, I was mesmerized by the people who could talk and they would inspire you and motivate you and drive you to do things. So I wanted to be that guy. Imagine a little kid that admires something and afraid the same thing. So I only knew one way to conquer that knowledge is to study it. And that was my PhD. I was studying human behavior. I was studying body language. I was studying leadership. And after 15 years, I have transformed myself. And that is what we are going to be doing here today.
Fantastic.
With our discussions, we're going to show some science-based knowledge on how people can transform their lives the way I do.
This is what we want. And I want to tell you that I'm in absolute admiration of you, because by you admitting that you were a shy kid, and here I want to add something, that you're also a public speaker and you're phenomenal at it. You've participated in TEDx talks, and I've watched your talks as well, and I was like, whoa, this guy has some very good examples to share with the world. And something that people might not know is that when it comes to public speaking, usually public speaking ranks among the biggest fears that anyone could ever have in their life, followed by death and then loneliness. So public speaking is petrifying for most people. And I'm so happy to see a person that has recognized, let's say, his own points of improvement, because I don't want to call it weakness, his own points of improvement, and you took action for those things. So
can I add something here?
Yes, go ahead.
It's this great quote. It says that your brain never stops works from the day you were born until you get on stage and talk in public.
Whoa, okay. Okay, that's great. That's great. Now, I want to know more about how does this area of influence relate to mental health, and obviously we're here to uplift people's lives. What are those tips that you have that you would like to share with us?
Many tips, and we're going to get into this as we talk. But first of all, answering to your first part of the question, how does that relate to mental health? When you have the power to influence yourself and those around you, that means that you can create healthy relationships. Healthy relationship with your own mindset, but with the people around you. Influence them in a good way to do things that will create mutual gain, and influence yourself to feeling better, to reacting better to situations. You of all people know that, and we have been discussing that many times. The power to influence ourselves starts from the within, right?
Absolutely. And what are those practices that, let's say, how do you influence? I know that this is also part of the theme that we have for today, but how did you first manage to influence yourself before you managed to influence other people through your storytelling abilities?
Influence myself. Okay. The first thing the first tactic I use to influence myself is by meditating and reading a lot of stuff, reading other people's wisdom, learning from other people's mistakes. But because this is a huge conversation, I would like to begin with something crazy.
Yes.
Let's get into the tips of influence, right? So in order to influence yourself and others, sometimes you need to be a little bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to the first story I have here to share with you.
Great.
It's a story with the billionaire that almost buried his Bentley. You know that story?
No, why would someone do that?
It's about a billionaire called Chiquino Scarpa.
Okay.
Okay, that guy gathered the media, the press, everybody to his mansion because he wanted to bury his Bentley in his backyard. He was inspired by the pharaoh, the Egyptians. So he had these big ropes and they were lowering the Bentley, $500,000 worth Bentley, in a tomb. And he said that, okay, why the pharaohs are burying the most valuable assets with them? I want to do that too. And he was the most hated man in Brazil for doing that. He was arrogant. People are starving and you're burying your Bentley. They hated that. And just about before the Bentley hit the ground, he stopped the ceremony and took everybody in his mansion. And he told them his words. Everybody knows that burying this car is a waste and it's crazy. Yet, most of us choose to bury something much more valuable than this car, our organs. So, this whole act, this whole scheme was a trick to make people more sensitive and more aware that we bury our organs, our most precious things in the whole world. We bury them with us in our tomb while we could donate them. So it was all about donating organs.
Wow.
And he went from zero to hero. From the most hated man in Brazil, he became one of the most powerful philanthropists / icon. At the same day, the donations of organs went up to 32% increase on that very day. You know? And as Chris Brown once said, you will never be old and wise if you were never young and crazy. So influence sometimes is all about being intense, doing things that will shake things up, being a little bit crazy, and then you can cause influence.
Oh, to that. My God, that's such a fantastic story that you've just shared with us. What a fantastic marketing strategy. You create questions, you create certain emotions in people, because the human mind is like a parachute. If you don't create emotions, it doesn't open up to receive. And this person opened the parachute for each one, and then he managed to implant what he wanted the message to communicate, he wanted to communicate to the world.
Man, wow. I'm stealing that, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm quoting you, but I'm stealing the parachute emotion.
It's so fascinating what you've shared with us. I'm so excited that for everyone that is going to watch this episode, because you add so much value in these stories. So this is obviously the most crazy story that I've heard. What about words? Can we influence our world with the words that we use? Because we hear a lot about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, right? We hear about be mindful of the way you code your reality. I think Bruce Lee was the person that said, be very careful for the way that you speak to yourself, because words have a certain power. And what we know is that you cast a spell whenever you speak certain sentences or certain words. So can words influence our world?
Of course they can, yes. Let me give you an example. I went into a meeting the other day and somebody wanted to see me. First words I heard of her mouth: really sorry to waste your time. Why start with sorry? Why apologize for something that can potentially be valuable? The obvious alternative would be thank you for your time. You still show gratefulness, yeah? but you are not apologizing for something you didn't do. There is power in the words we use. There is power. There is this amazing story with Steve Jobs. You know, when Steve Jobs was looking for a powerful CEO, for a very capable CEO to hire, he immediately go to John Skelly, you know? But John Skelly at that time, he was the CEO of PepsiCo. It was a $2 billion industry at the moment. So it was a huge backstep for Steve Skelly to abandon his job and go with Steve Jobs, right? And he said no, obviously. But they became friends and they were hanging out. And one day, Steve Jobs, as they were talking, he told him, man, are you going to come with me and change the world? Or do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? And John Scully says that those two words, sugar, water, made him think that, man, am I wasting my life here? Am I built for something bigger? And he quitted a big time job to go with Steve Jobs and also change his life. Words create worlds. It's one of my favorite quotes about words. Words create worlds. The words we use create the words we live in.
That's magic. That's magic. There was a little bit of a dark plot, though, on behalf of Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Like, he literally shredded this guy's world. My goodness.
I have some body language also, if you want to share with you.
Yes.
We talked about self-influence, right?
Yes.
Right before that. So, you know, body language was my world for a long time. It was it was a big part of my Ph.D. So what I did was that I was studying facial expression. I was studying the anatomy of the human face. And as I was studying the anatomy, I was reading about all these diseases, about the strong headaches might mean that, about the tweaking that might mean this. And after a while, I started experiencing symptoms of the diseases I was studying. And I got worried. Am I having a stroke now? And I went into my doctor and he laughed when I talked to him about that. He told me, don't worry about it. There is this thing called the medical student syndrome. Yeah. It's a thing that the medical student will get in the second years of their study when they're studying disease, when they feel that they're sick, but it's not the same as hypochondria, not the same thing. He told me that you are actually being extra sensitive on the sensations of that part of your body that you are studying. So if I'm feeling quite a bit of a headache, my mind explodes that feeling and it thinks that, oh, it's a migraine, you know? And it's a medical. So what am I getting at? When you put information inside you, you get influenced by that information. And you might even cause psychosomatic reactions as you, more than anyone, should know. And I have two more about the body language. You know the power poses study by Amy Cuddy? That was a brilliant phenomenon what we can cause to ourselves. Because when we talk about body language, we think about two interactions. What we convey to others and what others convey to us. But there is a third interaction. What we convey to us. So Amy Cuddy put people do like this, open, expand their bodies, that called power poses, and they measured two key hormones, cortisol and testosterone. And when people were doing this, they would increase their testosterone, the dominance hormone, leadership, confidence, stuff like that, and decrease the cortisol hormone, which is the hormone of stress. And then they put the same people, shrink their body. And guess what? Reversed. So when we shrink our body, we increase the cortisol, we increase our stress, and we decrease our testosterone. We decrease how dominant and confident we feel. And that's magic.
It's impressive.
And that study was reinforced with the pen study. Do you know that pen can make you happier? Let me show you how. So if you hold a pen using your teeth only, without the lips touching the pen, you can make yourself happier. There was this study that they connected wires coming out of the subject faces, and they went into a machine called electromyography. And when they bite a pen, there is this muscle here called orbicularis oculi, which is the same muscle that is activated when we feel authentic joy, when we smile with all our heart. And when you do this, you are like simulating your joy. And you feel happier.
Yep.
But when they put the same people doing this, they didn't feel anything. Where am I getting at? You can cause feelings to yourself. You can influence yourself. So when you're having a public speaking event, or when you're having an interview, when you're having a date, don't shrink yourself. Use more smiles. You can influence yourself. You can hack yourself feeling better. That's why when I have a speech, you will find me in the restroom doing all power poses and smiling to my mirror. When people see me in there, they must think I'm crazy.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
But you'll never be...
And thank you for sharing that, actually. This is a very interesting study that you've just shared with us. And I remember the way they investigated the study was to give them comics. And by doing these small alterations in the grip of the pen, people that were reading a comic and they had the pen between their teeth, they rated the comic as much funnier than the ones that did it the other way. And it's amazing to me because our body holds so much innate wisdom, and most of the times we are unable to harness that, or we forget. We become so ingrained in our own thoughts, being eaten up by our own mind, that we do not move our body in a way that is going to help our psychology. And another thing to add on this is that they say that people that do Botox, they are much happier because their whole face lifts up.
Wow.
I don't know exactly the citation of the study, but I believe that Google can definitely help our audience in regards to that. So
food for thought for my CrossFit here, huh?
It's I don't know, because I'm doing Botox myself every now and then.
I can't tell. Wow.
It's been a year now.
Okay.
It's been a year. Maybe I'm up for it. Retouch. That's right. So, Savvas, let me, there is something that I have here written down for you. What is your number one advice to start getting the things that we want? Because you gave us some examples on how we can change our emotional state by doing our power poses and also our face. And I would like you to share those studies with me. Maybe we could put it down on the comments.
Of course. Number one advice. Yeah, excellent question. But let's play a game, shall we?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
I have 10 euros in my pocket, okay? And I want for you to convince me to give those 10 euros to you. Use argumentation, persuasion, influence, whatever you want. Try to convince me to give it to you.
Okay, it's going to be tricky. I need to work on my sales techniques. It looks that it's fake. Would you like to give it to me to give you another one the same, of the same value?
Of course, you would give me one back though?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. I love it. I love it. The only thing is that you didn't get 10 euros. You got this bill. But you did something that most of the people don't do. You asked. So when I do that with audiences, people would give me all these crazy details and statements, and they will tell me about their cat, that they need to buy a necklace, and they tell me that their son needs immediately to get an ice cream or 2-3 ice creams and they need to get, and they forget something really important, to ask. So my number one tip is to ask. Why? Because if you use statements bring resistance. Questions bring answers. And in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you take. And you only take if you ask. So number one tip is don't forget to ask.
Wow.
You earn it.
Thank you very much. The first time I'm getting paid, guys, in a podcast. Thank you very much. I'll take this. Thank you, Savvas, for the beautiful example. Now, there was my mind has kind of drifted into this state of why do people do not ask? Why are we hesitant to ask other people for anything? It could be a bill, it could be help. It's like as if our ego is inhibiting us from asking for help. And something that, I mean, we've been programmed this way by our current social standards. Our current social standards, not the way that society used to be.
Very interesting observation. And my interpretation of this is that, first of all, we are afraid of getting rejected. Okay, rejection is one. But I often see that in all kinds of relationship. We don't ask and we wait for the other person to assume what do we need to give them to us. But think about how simple life could be if we just asked. Even in our sexual life, just ask. It might happen. You will never know. In our relationship with our children, ask them to do what you want, and learn your children to ask you what they really want. Most of the times we get sideways to what we want, and all of the misinterpretation happen in that side path, you know.
It sounds like manipulation. It's like it's a crazy thing. We go the full circle instead of just taking a straight line to get where we want to. And this manipulation that goes on, or this sideway approach to things, is as if that we're all suffering from some form of personality disorder, in which we're trying to exploit the other person. Are there any influence hacks in business that follow a more direct line instead of this form of manipulation?
Okay, we'll get into the concept of manipulation in a while, but since you asked about business, I will tell you a wonderful example, which is on the blurry lines of manipulation and actual connections with the customer. So there is this example in restaurants, and they gave waitresses chocolate, little chocolate. Just before the check, the waitress came and she put one chocolate before handing on the bill. When she did that, the bill went up, the tips went up by 3.2% in comparison to when not giving the chocolate. Now, the second condition was that the waitresses bring 2 chocolates, and it went up to 10%. The tips increased, and then they gave them 3 chocolates. And guess what? Nothing changed. It was about 10% increase. It was like giving 2 chocolates. Now listen to the fun part. They put the waitresses, bring 2 chocolates, then they went off to leave. They waited, they paused a bit, they scratched their heads, and then they came back and gave a 3rd chocolate. So it was again 3 chocolate, but now it was 2 plus 1. You know what I mean? That one is just for you. And the tips went up to an impressive 21% increase. What does that tell us? That we can influence people when we show them that we care. And I have a really, really nice quote here that from the William James, the famous philosopher and psychologist. The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated, right? Now, there is a big discussion here about how, in what extent are that kind of hacks, as you call them, is a product of manipulation, or is it a way to connect with your customer? And if you want, we can talk about this now or later on in the discussion.
No, I would like to keep the flow.
Okay, the
conversation.
Flow. Think about influence and everything we've said so far. Think about it as a hammer. You know, a hammer, right? You can use a hammer to fixing in your house. You can use a hammer to break a window. You can use a hammer to murder someone. And that's exactly how influence works. As they say in superhero movies, with great power comes great responsibility. So yes, influence can be used to manipulate people, but it also can be used to build better relationships, to influence yourself, to get better results with yourself. So if someone wants to use it for a bad cause, it's, by all means, it's there. But once you understand how important it is in your life, it's the equation of to use it or not. Either you like it or not, you influence yourself and you influence people with it.
It's the intentions at the end of the day that define a good deed or a bad deed. And that's a very good example there to give. And hearing you speak about the chocolate and the tips, and this is something that we usually expect also in our culture as Greeks, that usually whenever you finish your food, someone brings you some dessert or a shot glass of a liquor. And as if it's we take it for granted in our culture, right? But whenever we leave our country and someone does the same thing, we appreciate it. We appreciate it even more because it doesn't always happen. And this is nice what you're saying. I'm thinking it's this innate level of gratitude. I appreciate you. And we all want to be appreciated at the end of the day. So it revolves around the human principles of being loved and being in service. Now, I know that you do a lot of public speaking. Are there any tactics that you use there to, I don't know, draw people's attentions? Or we said about how you hype yourself up or how you use your body to help you perform. But are there any specific tactics that you use to influence people?
Many.
Okay.
Many. We won't talk about everything now, but I will tell you two. Okay. Actually, this is a game we play when I teach public speaking into my seminars. It's called the sniper.
Okay.
Do I have your attention?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So imagine 20 people in a seminar, or 50 people, or 100 people. I put them all standing. I make them to stand. So you have a standing audience. And I take one audience member to play the game. He's the sniper or she's the sniper. And I tell them, you have 1 minute to talk about anything you like to talk. And when you deeply connect with one audience member, they need to sit down. That means you shot him with your connection, you know?
Wow. They
They must be connected. So imagine that I'm talking to a public now, I'm talking to an audience. And Stefanos, do you feel the connection now? And I'm continuing talking. And when I turn to you, Stefanos, and if you don't feel the connection, I lean into you and use my body and try to get into you with my eye gaze. You feel the connection, you're supposed to sit down. 1 minute, you are supposed to do as many kills as you can in the audience. And that is a very intriguing activity for the people that are participating in the training, because they understand the value of connection. That is that feeling when you get when you go to a good speech, when you say, oh man, It's like he's talking directly to me. That's exactly that feeling. And as John Maxwell says, everybody communicates, but only a few people connect. And when you learn to connect, you can influence people. And that is not a manipulation. You can talk to their souls like we are doing now. We are connected. Right?
And how do people connect? What do you think makes people glued together?
For me, it's when they share experiences together. Now we are sharing an experience, and in public speaking, in any of my speeches, I try to make it look like a conversation. I'm not talking from a podium far, far away. I will get down, I will play with the audience, I will talk to them, I will try to talk to their souls by using the experiences of everyday life. And I have another tip for you. You will love this one also. I call this the full pause, the full body pause, actually. Now, we all know about the value of pause, you know? When you pause, people can recollect their thoughts, dopamine, you can create suspense and all this good stuff. But I see too many people pausing by not talking, but they continue moving in the stage and they're doing all sorts of stuff with their body. When you pause, you need to freeze yourself. Because when you freeze yourself, when you pause your body posture, when you pause your gestures, when you pause everything in your body, people will focus where? On your face. Let me give you an example. Imagine
a specific part of the face that they focus.
Facial area.
Facial area.
Yeah. Imagine a toddler playing. No, not a toddler. Imagine a 6 years old baby and playing with their toys. You go and do like this. He or she will look around and he will focus on your face. Why? Because from a very young age, human beings know that the face will give an answer. So when you do that on stage, when you pause, people focus on your face. When you pause with your words, people will go into your face to look for an answer. That is where you want them to be, because this is the most emotional part. This is the most emotional part of our body. In many, many speeches, when I go to take the stage, you will see me saying nothing. When they present me, I will walk, I will plant my feet in the center of the stage, I will pause and look around, and then say, good evening. So that pause allowed the audience to focus on my face, to record the information from my emotional stage at that moment, my enthusiasm, my passion, my eagerness to go there and talk to them. And then I start talking. So I allowed them to absorb all the information and the emotional content before I start talking.
Nice. And this is so important because whenever even the intonation of our voice, let's say you're speaking and slowly your tone goes down, dopamine goes up, you enhance your auditory abilities, and or you pause. People are like, oh, what happened here? My dopamine, is it gonna go down or is it gonna go up? So it creates that anticipation, and that anticipation is what is driving us to pay attention, whether that's our goal, our speaker. And this is extremely fascinating what you've shared with me right now, and I will try and do that on stage as well, to be honest. Influence, the way that we approach people. Is there any misinformation nowadays or false information?
Yes, that is a big and very useful for our audience subject to talk about. It's all about the misinformation that is out there through social media and all this fake news that we allow to get into our brain processing. But I will start with an example so all this can make sense. Okay. I had this collaboration with the FBI National Associates in Cyprus. We did some deception detection seminars. So I had to talk to interrogators on how to question subjects, how to detect liars and stuff like that. It was a very intriguing subject for me. So I had to went through the literature really carefully, because I'm talking to people that do this every single day. So I was digging into the literature and I found this very interesting finding. Okay, it said that when people look up into the left, that means that they are telling the truth. That means they're recollecting memories, so it's coming from a true place. While when people look up and to the right, that means that they're lying. They are picking up things from their imagination. And it was awesome. And I found that in textbook and in people that talked about lie detection and stuff like that. And when I went into the academic literature, I found that this was all nonsense. It's not true. It's so attractive. It's so catchy and easy to say and easy to remember, but it's not true. And what I'm talking about is that something that it's attractive and it's bold and it's easy to remember and it's shareable, if you say it enough times, it can be your reality. For interrogators, it can be a destructive reality. And if that reality is shared by a lot of people, it can be a cultural thing. And if that culture passes it on from culture to culture, it can be a tradition, which can be very dangerous, because a tradition can be something you do without even knowing what you do it, without even knowing if it's correct or wrong, but you just do it because you were taught to do it. What I'm getting at is that with all that misinformation, it's good for us to do what I did. Dig into the literature, dig into the academic reviews, search it by yourself, create an opinion by yourself. Have an open mind. An open mind is not an empty one.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And what at least monks say, even if they read a lot of books and if they participate in a lot of philosophical discussions, they say that I know nothing. Because if I admit to myself that I know everything, it means that I will stop growing. It means that I'm gonna cocoon myself, and I'm never gonna keep evolving or transforming and becoming bigger and bigger. And I would like to speak to you more about lie detection and psychopaths and serial killers, which is a really fascinating topic. And I think that all of us wanna really understand whether the person that is sitting opposite us, they're being truthful to us, and we're not catching ourselves as being fools or being manipulated. Now, because this is a question that I've went into, and maybe we're diverting a little bit from our conversation at a personal level, is that for me, no matter what happens, is that love is the path. It doesn't matter if the person opposite you wants to manipulate you or cheat you, because at the end of the day, the gap that exists within them, this black hole that is gonna suck everything in, has nothing to do with you. Boop, boop. Hey guys, thank you for watching. If you're enjoying this video, do not forget to hit the subscribe button. It would mean a lot to us. And I mean more about the emotional side of things. I'm not speaking about monetary incentives and someone is tricking you into buying a product that is not really being the product that you need. So deception is definitely a huge part that interests a lot of people. Don't know if you want to add something there.
I think that might be a different podcast. For now, I think that I have another example of influence for you if you want to share that.
Yes.
And I think deception can be quite a long conversation. We have a lot of things to say, but it will be diverging a lot from the discussion about the research that came in a zoo. And I'm telling you that because that has practical applications into our relationship with our kids.
Because it has animals.
You're gonna get disappointed. Yeah,
okay.
It has animals, but it's the human primate. There is this. It's very interesting. There is a study that it took place in a zoo.
Okay.
This study took place in a zoo. So what they did was that the researchers approached people and asked them to escort in a 2-hour tour in the zoo juvenile offenders. So they asked them to volunteer. How would you feel?
Awkward,
right? So most of the answers were no. Some of the people that really, really wanted to help, they said yes, but 1 and 2 in 100. So what they did afterwards was that they applied the crazy demand principle. The crazy demand principle is that they approached people and asked them 2 demands. The first was if they could do that to escort in a 2-hour visit the juvenile offenders for 2 years in a row every week, it's a crazy demand. 100% of the people said no. But right after that, they said, okay, if you're not willing to do that, will you be willing to escort them just for today for 2 hours? And guess what?
They said yes.
Many people said yes. Because we are hardwired to say yes more often than not, right? Mm-hmm. So when they burned their nose in the crazy, their nose, not this nose, the no, in the crazy demand, they feel that the second demand was a bargain. And if you take a good look in your personal life, the crazy demand and the normal demand is all over the place. My son the other day wanted to buy a pet snake. Yes, that's right, a pet snake. In the glass, the pet snake. I'm terrified of snakes. And I tell him there is no way of putting a snake into the house. I'm terrified of them. And 2 hours afterwards, he came and asked me for a PlayStation game. Guess what happened?
You bought a PlayStation game.
And I wonder if he heard me preparing about the crazy demand.
Wow, man. That's something great, actually. That's something great. And this is an excellent also sales tactic, isn't it? Because we want to be loved, we want to be appreciated, we want to be accepted. And if you build a connection with a person, let's say, okay, I like Savva. I want to help him. He asks something from me, but that's a little bit higher from what I can offer at this point. But you ask me of something lower, I'm going to give you that. Because there is this connection between us.
And it seems like a bargain, the
it
lower. It
seems like a bargain, yeah, definitely, for sure. Savva, I want to ask you, after 15 years of researching the scientific literature and public speaking, what do you have to say about leadership? What is your opinion?
Excellent question. And three things. If I had to sum my knowledge up to 3 basic things, I would say these 3. The first is when I began studying leadership, I was obsessed of defining leadership. 15 years later, I understand now that the defining leadership cannot be done. Cannot be done because leadership is different, but for different people. So what is spot on about leadership is that thing that Warren Bennis, the father of leadership, told about leadership. He told that leadership is like beauty. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. That's the first thing. The second thing about leadership is that you cannot demand leadership. You need to earn it. Leadership is not position, it is action. And as the Afghan proverb says, if you think you're leading and no one is following, you're just taking a walk, right? And the third thing is that trust is the most expensive asset in leadership. It takes years to build, and just seconds to lose. Right? And besides, if you don't trust the messenger, you won't trust the message. That's very important for leaders.
It's huge.
These three things.
Wow. Now, the last thing that I want to ask you, so that we can close this beautiful and so valuable conversation that we had today, Savva, and thank you so much for coming into our podcast.
It was an honor, man.
I can only imagine the comments in regards to this episode and the value that people are going to get by just watching our conversation today. This is definitely one of my favorite conversations that I had with my guests.
Honored.
And I would like to end this conversation with you sharing one quote that changed your life or that you live by.
One. Can I say three? In one?
Okay, yes.
Can I say
okay, yes.
Yeah, 3 quotes. The first has to be Dalai Lama's quote.
Yes.
If you think you're too small to make a difference, try spending the night with a mosquito. Don't underestimate yourself.
Yeah.
Nobody's too small to make a change.
Absolutely.
Okay. The second is from Lao Tse. It says that what the caterpillar calls the end of life, the rest of the world calls it a butterfly. What that means is that when you endure your darkest moments, you will get rewarded. It's nature's way, not my way. Look, goosebumps. And the third and final, it's my mantra for the last 2 or 3 years, is that only when things change inside you, things will change around you.
Oh.
Okay? And I hear people complaining so much nowadays. Stop complaining about the things you didn't get because of the things you didn't do. Start doing things for a change. If you dream about something, start doing something. Don't complain about something.
Go get it.
If you didn't get the results, it's because you didn't put the work in.
Absolutely.
Those 3 things.
And you cannot be jealous, you cannot be hateful if you've literally haven't done anything to attain the things that you've always wanted.
Exactly.
Savva, thank you so much. Thank you so much. For those of you that think that are mosquitoes and cannot make a huge change in people's lives, think again. Savva, thank you very much for today's conversation. And I cannot wait to have you again.
30 seconds to thank you, Stefanos and Helene, for the excellent event, the impeccable planning here. You really make people feel family.
Thank you, brother.
Really make people feel at home. And I'm a big fan of your work and the way you analyze things, the way you bring science and personal experience and the power of gratefulness into the equation. I will continue following your work, and let's go outside and say some more.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. It's been an absolute pleasure filming it for you guys. If you like the work that we are putting out into the world, please make sure you like this video and you subscribe to our channel. It really helps the work that we do.
And if you would like to follow our journey on our IG accounts, as well as learn more about our services, we provide everything for you in the description below. Thanks for watching.